We're going to take a look at the G-Ronn, or different variations of the G-Ronn, and see how to play it and where to play it and why it works. We're going to look at that. Take a look at this tab and learn these runs, and we'll go from there. Here are examples of the G-Ronn. The highlighted one right here is the fullest one we're going to talk about in this clip. It starts off on your low G and works its way up to the middle G here, and then goes back to your G chord. For all of these runs, we're inserting them into our rhythm playing at the appropriate points, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But to start off with, learn these three runs. So here's the one, G up to G. This one starts on A and works its way up to G and then goes back to the chord. And this one is a little simpler. It starts on A, but it has less going on. This one's shorter and quicker and more to the point, so you can insert this into shorter phrases or into shorter breaks. But all three of these are good examples of this G-Ronn. So learn these guys. I'm going to play them for you here in a minute so you get the phrasing down, but you can start off by reading through them. What you see in the second line, these two measures, you'll have, this is the pathway to connect from G to C. So your G chord to your C chord. It's just a simple bass walk up. G, A, B, C, puts you back into the chord. Likewise over here, you've got G to D. So this bass walk up, you've got B, C to D, and then puts you into this D chord. Play with both of those because we're going to look at creating a rhythm part that will establish each of these movements, each of these runs, and we'll use these different G-Ronns to plug the space or to pull the trigger, so to speak. These runs are really good to cause you to realize that something's about to occur or something just finished. So learn these runs and then we'll do more with them in just a minute. Now that you've looked at the tab, I'm going to play the three G-Ronns that are on that, just so you get an idea of the phrasing that goes along with it. That first one, and second one, and the third one. So you get different little bit of variations depending on how much time you have to work with and how much you want to have, how much impact you want to have on that spot. I look at these G-Ronns as triggers to show that a phrase, a vocal phrase or a melodic phrase of any kind has just ended. If you're thinking about it, before I go to that C, if you looked at that tab right below that, I could have gone and walked up to that C. Well, that movement, it represents we're changing. It represents it sets you up to go to this new chord instead of just without any sort of warning or flow. It gives it that flow. Well, the G-Ronn's doing the same thing. If we got to the end of a phrase, that G-Ronn triggers that the phrase is ending and a new one's starting. There's other places you can plug it in. If we were looking at like Blue Night, it has 3 bars of G and then it goes to a bar of C. Well, in order to trigger us to stay on G for that third bar, they throw in, Charles Sautel in that version that Hot Rise did, throws in a G-Ronn like that, a shorter one, just to say, hey, we're staying on this G. So it'd be like, so by throwing in these runs, you're telling both the people you're playing with and the people that are listening to this music get ready, something's changing. Get your ears ready to move to this other point, or we're coming back, or ending a phrase. And it also just creates something interesting. I mean, to say the least. Instead of just strumming away, you've got these little movements that add creativity and something extra to those empty spaces, and it keeps everything fresh. Then you start to hear the song broken up in chunks, and the more interesting and the more elaborate, without getting too busy, I'll add, your rhythm playing and these runs get, the more the listener and the players can start to minimalize the pieces of the song and sort of manage them in smaller sections. And so you get to think of a new phrase, you get to think of something new's going on. So that's what these are. These are triggers to represent that something's about to change, or something has ended and something new is starting, or something's starting over. So play around with that for a minute. So now that you've had a chance to look at this tab and play around with the phrasing, let's play together a little bit. And I'm gonna play through a chord progression just so you get first without any runs or anything added into it, so you can get a feel for what this progression is. And what we're gonna do is 3 bars of G, a bar of C, and then a split bar, G for 2 beats, C for 2 beats, then a full bar of G, a full bar of D, and a full bar of G. That's 8 full bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our whole phrase. It's 8 bars. So let's do that one more time. But now I'm going to add in the G runs, and I'm going to add in the movement, the runs between the chords. So each time that we change chords, we're going to plug in that bass movement, or so we know that those chords are changing. And at the end of the phrase, at the end of this whole sequence, we're going to do the full run, the full G run. And then the one other place we're going to put it is we're going to look and say, well, we had the 3 bars of G and 1 bar of C, so we're going to split that in half, and we're going to do the 2 bars of G, and we're going to throw in the short run during that second bar to trigger us to stay on that G for the third bar. The reason that triggers us to stay there is because the run itself, it ends on G, so it sets you up to stay on that chord. If it ended on something else, it could set us up to play a different chord. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's samples of where we put these runs in. I would suggest that you play around with tunes that you're already playing and that you're already familiar with, and pay attention to where the phrases are, where the phrases end, like a vocal line ends, and see if there's a space there. And if there is, well, that G run, does it make sense to put it in there? Or play around with connecting these chords together so that you end up with more flowing bass lines, and you end up with these triggers, going on. These G run type triggers and the different kinds of runs that you can plug in. So take these ideas, play with them, develop them further, but take the idea and the concept, try to plug it into your own playing, and see if you can expand on it. Have some fun with it.